Hello class, today we're going to be looking at solving two-step equations. We're going to be reviewing what we talked about yesterday so that you can work on the assignment today. So the first thing, let's review what an equation is. So what is an equation? Well, hopefully you remember that it is nothing but two expressions that are equal to each other. Okay? So what is our goal in an equation? Our goal is to get the variable by itself, to solve for the variable. Now, last year you did one-step equations. We reviewed those yesterday. But your assignment's going to be straight two-step equations. So what we got to remember with equations, with more than one operation, in other words, there's multiply and add, or there's divide and subtract. Okay, with equations with more than one operation, you solve using reverse order of operations. So when we're doing PEMDAS, you do parentheses, then you do exponents, then you do the multiply divide, then you do add subtract. And then once you're done with that, you have an answer. But with an equation, you're having to work it backwards. So the last thing that you would do in an order of operation problem is the first thing you do in an equation. Okay, so the last thing was add subtract. So the first thing you have to get rid of is the add subtract. Then you get rid of the multiply divide. Then you get rid of the exponents. Then you get rid of parentheses if needed. Okay, we'll deal with those a little bit later on. Okay, so let's start off with a simple equation. 5t plus 12 equals negative 18. So the first thing that I have to get rid of is this plus 12. And how do we get rid of the plus 12? We add the opposite. Okay, so I need to add the opposite of this plus 12. So what I need to see, and I am expecting to see work. If I do not see this work, I will count your problem wrong. So I should see the following. 5t plus 12 plus negative 12. So we added the opposite to get rid of that 12 because my ultimate goal is to get that t by itself. Equals. Now we know the rule. The rule is if I do something to one side of the equation, I have to do it to the other. So here I've got a negative 18 plus, and then the new thing that I added on this side of the equation on the left side was plus negative 12. So I need to do the same thing on the right-hand side. It helps if you actually underline those so that you know you have them on both sides. So now we do the math. My 12s, like designed, they go away. And I'm left with 5t. Make sure you bring the 5 with the t. Don't just mark the 5 out. Equals. And now I do the math on the other side. Negative 18 plus negative 12 gives me negative 30. Okay? So I've got rid of the plus and minus. So now I'm ready to get rid of the multiply and divide. And to get rid of a multiply, you do a divide. So if I have a multiply by 5 right here, I'm going to do a divide by 5 because my ultimate goal is to find out how much 1t is worth, not 5t's. Okay, so I divide this side by 5. So I divide the other side by 5. We must do the same thing to both sides. So my 5s, 5 divided by 5 turns into a 1. So I end up with 1t, or just plain t, equals, and then negative 30 divided by 5. Well, 30 divided by 5 gives me 6. One negative makes it negative. Now, if I were to take that negative 6 and plug it back into my equation, like intelligent people do, you can check to see if your answer is correct. So in this particular case, I've got 5 times negative 6, because that's what my t is equal to, plus 12. Does that give me negative 18? Well, 5 and negative 6 gives me negative 30. So negative 30 plus 12 does give me negative 18, so that is a correct answer. So let's try another one. Okay, so this one, I've got a subtraction problem. Well, we know back from working with integers, we don't do subtraction problems. So we change them. So I'm going to take this subtraction, change it to addition, and then the 5, I change it to its opposite. Okay, so now we're ready to solve the problem. The first thing I have to get rid of is this plus negative 5. So I should see on your paper, 3x plus negative 5 plus 5, because that's its opposite, equals, and if I added this to one side, I must add it to the other as well. So my 5's on the left go away, and we're left with 3x is equal to 15 when I put the 10 and the 5 together. Now I don't want to know about 3x's, I only want to know about 1x. So I divide this by 3. I divide the 15 by 3, because what I do to one side, I must do to the other. These 3's divide out, and I'm left with x is equal to, and 15 divided by 3 gives me 5. Now again, if we were to plug that back in to the original problem, 3 times 5 minus 5, does that give me 10? Well, 3 times 5 gives me 15. 15 minus 5 does equal 10, so that is correct. Okay, so what if you had a division problem in here? Do we do that the same exact way? Yes. Okay. Again, the first thing we get rid of is the plus 6. So we got g over 4 plus 6 plus the negative 6, because that's my opposite, equals negative 4 plus the negative 6. Make sure that's on both sides. So my 6's on the left go away, and I'm left with g over 4 equals, and the negative 4 plus negative 6, our signs are alike, so we add them to get negative 10. Now, how do I get rid of a divide by 4? Well, to get rid of the divide by 4, we do a multiply by 4. So if I multiply the left side by 4, I must multiply the right side by 4. So this 4 on top and this 4 on bottom, they divide out and become a 1, which is what I want, 1g. And 1g is equal to negative 10 times 4. Well, 10 times 4 is 40. 1 negative makes the whole thing negative. So again, if I plug the negative 40 back into my original equation, negative 40 divided by 4 plus 6, does that equal negative 4? Well, negative 40 divided by 4 gives me a negative 10. So negative 10 plus 6 does give me negative 4. Let's try one more, and then you'll be ready for your assignment. Well, in this problem, you're going to do the same exact thing, but you just start working on the right-hand side. So we start here at the equal sign. My goal is still to get this letter by itself, so I need to get rid of this plus 5. So we do that by adding its opposite. So we add a negative 5 to the right-hand side. So then I just come over to the left-hand side, and I take the 21, I write a little further over, and then I add the negative 5. Okay, so now when I add this together, I got 21 plus negative 5. Well, our signs are different, so we're going to subtract, and we end up with 16, and it's going to be a positive 16 because the 21 has more. And then on the right-hand side, my 5s are going to go away, and I'm left with just 4n. So now how do I get rid of a multiply by 4? We do a divide by 4, and you do that on both sides. So the 4's on the right divide out and become a 1. So I end up with 1n, or just n, equals, and then 16 divided by 4 gives us positive 4. Now if we were to plug that back into the original equation, 21 is equal to 4 times 4 plus 5. Well, 4 times 4 gives us 16. 16 plus 5 does give us the 21. So this does work. Okay, so just remember that when you're solving equations, okay, if you've got more than one operation like a two-step equation does, you start at the bottom of your order of operations with add and subtract. You get rid of add, subtract first. How do you do that? You add the opposite. Then you get rid of the multiply, divide. And how do you do that? You do the opposite. If you have a multiply, you do a divide. If you have a divide, you do a multiply.